Some moments arrive quietly, slipping into your life without announcement, without fanfare. They don't announce themselves with trumpets or warning signs. They simply happen. And in happening, they change everything. For Adrian Mitchell, that moment came at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night in March, when he was exhausted, behind on his bills, and questioning every decision that had brought him to this point in his life. He was a janitor at Portland's Mercy General Hospital, mopping floors in the psychiatric wing, when he heard it. Not a sound exactly, more like the absence of sound that felt wrong. He'd learned to trust his instincts during his 8 years in the Marine Corps. Those instincts had kept him alive in 2 tours overseas. And right now, they were screaming at him that something was off. Adrian pushed his cleaning cart aside and moved down the hallway, his sneakers silent against the polished floor. The psychiatric wing was supposed to be quiet at this hour, but this was a different kind of quiet. A held breath kind of quiet. A before something terrible happens kind of quiet. Room 237's door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, Adrian could see movement. A figure standing on a chair beneath the window, hands working at something near the ceiling. It took his brain a split second to process what he was seeing. A young woman, hospital gown hanging loose, tying a bedsheet around the ceiling pipe. Adrian didn't think. He reacted. The door slammed open as he burst through it. The woman's head whipped around, her eyes wide with shock and something else. Anger at being interrupted. She was younger than he'd initially thought, maybe 26 or 27, with dark hair falling around her face and eyes that held an ocean of pain. "Don't!" Adrian shouted, moving toward her. But she couldn't hear him. She turned back to her task, fingers fumbling with the knot. Adrian reached the chair in 3 strides. He grabbed her around the waist and pulled. She fought him, silently, desperately, her fists pounding against his arms, his chest, anywhere she could reach. But Adrian had 60 pounds of muscle on her and years of combat training. He lifted her off the chair, kicked it away, and gently lowered them both to the floor. She was crying now, great heaving sobs that produced no sound. Her hands moved frantically, forming shapes Adrian didn't understand sign language, he realized. She was deaf. Adrian held her carefully, not restraining but supporting, as her struggles weakened and the tears came harder. A nurse burst into the room, followed by a doctor. They took over, speaking in low, urgent tones while the young woman stared at nothing, tears streaming down her silent face. As the medical team worked, Adrian caught a glimpse of her chart on the rolling tray. Isabella Chun, age 27, admitted for severe depression following sudden hearing loss. The doctor was saying something about adjusting her medications, about moving her to intensive observation, about calling her family. But Adrian was watching Isabella's face, watching the emptiness there, the absolute certainty that she had nothing left to live for. He knew that look. He'd seen it in the mirror after his best friend Martinez had died in his arms in Kandahar. After Adrian had come home with a purple heart and PTSD nightmares that made sleep feel like enemy territory. After his fiancée had left because she couldn't handle his demons anymore. He knew what it felt like to want the pain to stop so badly that stopping your heart seemed like the only solution. As they wheeled Isabella out of the room, sedated now and blank-eyed, Adrian made a decision that would change both of their lives in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. He was going to save her. Not tonight, that was already done. But really save her. Help her find a reason to keep breathing. Help her discover that silence didn't mean the end of everything. The only problem? Adrian Mitchell didn't know a single word of sign language. "You want to do what?" Dr. Sarah Okonkwo stared at Adrian across her desk the next morning, her expression somewhere between confused and concerned. As the hospital's chief of psychiatry, she'd seen her share of unusual requests. But this one was new. "I want to volunteer with Isabella Chun," Adrian repeated. "Help with her recovery program. Whatever she needs." "Adrian, you're a janitor. A very good janitor. But I'm also a veteran with PTSD who's been through the hospital's recovery program twice. Adrian interrupted. I know what it's like to want to die. I know what it's like to feel like you've lost everything that made you who you are. Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying him with the sharp, analytical gaze that made her such an effective psychiatrist. You saved her life last night. That was heroic. But what you're talking about now is a long-term commitment. Isabella isn't just depressed. She's lost her hearing completely after a viral infection destroyed her auditory nerves 6 months ago. She was a concert violinist. Music was her entire life. Then she needs someone who understands loss, Adrian said quietly. She needs professional help, which she's getting. She needs therapy, which she's in. She needs time, she needs someone who won't give up on her, Adrian said. Someone who'll show up even when it's hard, even when she pushes them away, even when it feels hopeless. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then, why does this matter so much to you? Adrian had been expecting this question. He'd been asking it himself all morning. Because nobody showed up for me, he said finally. After I came home, after everything fell apart, I was drowning and everyone just watched. They didn't know what to say, so they said nothing. They didn't know how to help, so they didn't try. And I almost didn't make it. He met Sarah's eyes. I'm not going to let that happen to someone else if I can help it. Sarah pulled up Isabella's file on her computer. She's refused to engage with sign language instructors. Won't attend group therapy for the deaf community. Won't communicate with anyone except through written notes, and even that's minimal. She's built a wall around herself that nobody's been able to penetrate. Then I'll learn to climb walls. Despite herself, Sarah smiled. You're stubborn. I'll give you that. She tapped her fingers on the desk, thinking. Here's what I can do. I can assign you as a patient companion. It's a volunteer role we use sometimes for patients who need extra support. You'd spend time with her, supervised at first, helping with basic activities. But Adrian, you need to understand something. This might not work. She might never let you in. And you cannot take that personally. I won't. And, Sarah continued, you'll need to learn ASL, American Sign Language. You can't help someone if you can't communicate with them. Adrian nodded. Where do I start? Sarah scribbled on a notepad and handed him the paper. This is the number for Portland Deaf Services. They offer free ASL classes 3 times a week. I'll also set you up with some online resources. But Adrian, this is hard. Most people take years to become truly fluent. Then I'd better get started. Adrian attacked learning ASL the way he'd attacked everything else in his life, with single-minded intensity that bordered on obsession. He attended every class at Portland Deaf Services, practicing finger spelling until his hands cramped. He watched YouTube videos during his lunch breaks. He practiced signs while mopping floors, earning strange looks from passing doctors and nurses. His instructor at PDS was a woman named Carmen Rodriguez, a deaf teacher with 30 years of experience and absolutely no patience for half-hearted students. Your hand shape is wrong, she signed, her movements sharp and precise. Again, Adrian repeated the sign for understand. Better. Again. 50 more times. It was grueling. Sign language wasn't just about memorizing hand shapes. It was about facial expressions, body language, the subtle differences between signs that could completely change meaning. It was about thinking in a completely different way, about communication that didn't rely on voice or hearing. But Adrian was motivated, because twice a week he was allowed to sit with Isabella. Their first real interaction was a disaster. Adrian entered her room with a smile and signed, "Hello. My name is Adrian." Isabella looked at him with dead eyes, turned away, and pulled the blanket over her head. He tried again the next visit, and the next, and the next. For 3 weeks, Isabella completely ignored him. She wouldn't look at him, wouldn't acknowledge his signs, wouldn't read the notes he left. She existed in a cocoon of absolute isolation, and she clearly wanted to stay there. She's not responding to any intervention, Dr. Okonkwo told him after a month. Her family's talking about long-term residential care. Her father thinks. Her father, Adrian interrupted, needs to give her more time. Adrian, she's not improving. If anything, she's getting worse. Because everyone's treating her like she's broken. Like she needs to be fixed. Sarah raised an eyebrow. And what would you suggest we do instead? Adrian had been thinking about this. About what had actually helped him when he'd been at his lowest. Treat her like she's still herself. Like losing her hearing doesn't mean she lost everything else. Stop trying to fix her and start trying to see her. That's very poetic, but let me try something, Adrian said. Just trust me. One more week. The next time Adrian visited Isabella's room, he didn't try to sign to her. Didn't try to get her attention. He simply brought his guitar. He'd bought it at a pawn shop for $50, restringing it himself in his tiny apartment. It wasn't much, but it was functional. And it was all part of his plan. Isabella was in her usual position, sitting in the chair by the window, staring at nothing. Adrian settled on the floor across the room and began to play. He wasn't good. He'd never been particularly musical. But he knew enough chords to stumble through a few songs. He played quietly, not for her. She couldn't hear him anyway, but for himself, or so it would seem. He came back the next day and did the same thing. And the next day, and the next. On the fifth day, Isabella finally turned to look at him. Her expression was confused, irritated. She grabbed her notebook and wrote in angry, jagged letters, "I'm deaf. Can't hear you. Stop." Adrian set down the guitar and pulled out his own notebook. He wrote, "I know. I'm not playing for you to hear. I'm playing because music isn't just sound." Isabella stared at the words, then wrote, "That's stupid." Adrian wrote back, "Maybe, but I read that you were a violinist. That music was your whole life. And I thought maybe it doesn't have to be over just because you can't hear it anymore. You don't understand anything. You're right. I don't. But I want to." Isabella crumpled the paper and threw it across the room. But the next day, when Adrian returned with his guitar, she was watching him from the moment he walked in. This time, after he played for a while, he did something different. He walked over and gently took her hand, placing it flat against the body of the guitar. Then he played a simple chord. Isabella's eyes widened. She could feel the vibration, the physical sensation of music that didn't require ears to experience. Adrian signed slowly, carefully. Music is vibration. You can feel it. For the first time in 6 months, something flickered in Isabella's eyes that wasn't pain or anger. It was curiosity. She placed both hands on the guitar as Adrian played. Her eyes closed. A single tear ran down her cheek. But this time it wasn't a tear of despair. Recovery wasn't linear. It wasn't a steady climb upward. It was messy and complicated, filled with setbacks that felt like failures and small victories that felt like miracles. Some days, Isabella engaged with Adrian's lessons. She'd practice signs, write notes, even manage a small smile when he signed something incorrectly and she could correct him. Other days, she retreated back into her shell, refusing to communicate, refusing to try, the weight of her loss crushing her all over again. But Adrian showed up. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, after his shift ended, he was there. He brought his guitar and let her feel the vibrations. He practiced signing with her, his movements getting smoother and more confident as the weeks passed. He told her stories about his time in the Marines, about losing his friend, about his own battles with darkness. And slowly, so slowly it was almost imperceptible, Isabella started to come back. 3 months after their first meeting, she signed her first complete sentence to him. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Adrian felt his throat tighten with emotion. He signed back, "I never will." Isabella's family was cautiously optimistic. Her father, David Chun, was a surgeon who'd initially been skeptical of Adrian's involvement. But even he couldn't deny the change in his daughter. "She's starting to eat again," David told Adrian one evening in the hospital cafeteria. "She's sleeping better. She actually asked to go to the hospital's music therapy room yesterday. First interest in music since—" His voice broke. "Thank you. Whatever you're doing, it's working." "She's doing the work," Adrian said. "I'm just showing up. That's more than most people do." David studied him. "Dr. Okonkwo mentioned you're a veteran, that you've dealt with your own challenges." Adrian nodded. "PTSD. Some days are better than others. And yet you're here helping my daughter." "Maybe that's why I can help," Adrian said quietly. "Because I know what it's like to feel broken, to feel like you've lost the core of who you are." David was quiet for a moment. Then, "Isabella's mother died when she was 15. Car accident." Music was how Isabella processed that grief. She poured everything into her violin, eventually won a scholarship to Juilliard. She was on track to play with major symphonies. And then, the infection took her hearing, and she lost everything. Her career, her identity, her way of coping with pain. David's eyes were red. "I'm a surgeon. I can fix bodies. But I couldn't fix this. I couldn't fix her broken heart." "You don't have to fix it," Adrian said. "You just have to be there while she learns to live with it." 5 months into Adrian's visits, Isabella was finally discharged from the hospital. She'd made enough progress that continued inpatient care was no longer necessary. But Dr. Okonkwo was concerned about the transition. "She's done well here, where she has structure and support," Sarah told Adrian. "But going home, being in the place where she used to have her whole life before, it could be a significant setback." "Then I'll make sure she's not alone," Adrian said. "Adrian, your role as patient companion technically ends when she's discharged." "I don't care about the technical role. I care about making sure she's okay." Sarah smiled. "I thought you might say that. I've already spoken with Isabella and her father. With their permission, you can continue as a private companion. They're willing to pay you for your time." "I don't want their money." "Adrian, you work as a hospital janitor. Let them help you while you help her. Besides," Sarah added, "I think this might be good for you too. Having purpose, connection. These things matter." Adrian couldn't argue with that. So he started visiting Isabella at her home, a beautiful Victorian house in Portland's West Hills with a view of the city. The house was filled with evidence of her former life. Photographs of Isabella performing, awards and certificates. A music room with a gorgeous vintage violin displayed under glass like a museum piece. Isabella avoided that room entirely. Their sessions continued. Adrian brought his guitar. They practiced ASL together, both of them students now, both learning to exist in a world that required a different language. Isabella started teaching Adrian about music theory, using vibrations and visual representations to help him understand concepts he'd never learned. And somewhere in those afternoon sessions, something shifted. Adrian started noticing things he probably shouldn't have been noticing. The way Isabella's face lit up when she successfully signed a complex phrase. The grace in her movements. The strength it took for her to face each day when everything was still so hard. Isabella started noticing things too. The gentleness in Adrian's hands when he helped her feel musical vibrations. The patience in his eyes when she had bad days. The way he looked at her like she was still whole, still valuable, still worth knowing. Neither of them acknowledged what was growing between them. It was too fragile, too complicated. Adrian was supposed to be her support system, not whatever this was becoming. But feelings don't care about what they're supposed to be. 8 months after Adrian had pulled Isabella down from that chair, David Chun approached him with a proposal. "There's a benefit concert for the hospital next month," David said. "They want to honor the psychiatric wing for their work with at-risk patients. They've asked if anyone from that program would be willing to participate, share their story. Maybe. I'm not much of a public speaker, Adrian said. I wasn't thinking of you. David took a breath. I was thinking of Isabella. Adrian frowned. What did you have in mind? What if she performed? Nothing elaborate, maybe just a few minutes. But something to show that recovery is possible. That losing one sense doesn't mean losing everything. David, I don't know if she's ready. She's been playing again, David interrupted. Did you know that? In the music room, late at night when she thinks no one's awake. She plays her violin. Adrian's heart skipped. She has. For the past 2 weeks. I hear it through the walls, or rather, I hear the silence because of course I can't hear her technique, but I can hear when she stops and starts, the rhythm of it. She's playing again, Adrian. Because of you. Because of herself, Adrian corrected. I just showed up. Then show up for this too. Help me convince her that she can do this. Adrian found Isabella in her room that evening. She was sitting by the window, signing practice phrases to herself. Something she did when she was anxious. He knocked on the doorframe to get her attention, and she turned. Your father told me about the concert, Adrian signed. Isabella's face immediately closed off. No. Why not? Because I can't perform if I can't hear myself. Because I'll make mistakes. Because everyone will pity me. Because... Her hands moved frantically, her signing becoming choppy with emotion. Adrian moved closer, gently taking her hands to still them. Because you're scared. Isabella pulled away, tears in her eyes. Of course I'm scared. Music was everything to me, Adrian. Everything. And now it's gone. It's not gone, Adrian signed. It's different. You can still feel it. You can still create it. And you're still you. Still the person who poured your heart into every performance. But I can't hear if I'm doing it right. Then feel it, Adrian signed. Trust your body, your muscle memory, your heart. And trust that the people watching aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for courage. Isabella stared at him, tears streaming down her face. What if I fail? Then you fail in front of people who love you and want to see you try. Adrian cupped her face gently, wiping away tears with his thumbs. But Isabella, what if you don't fail? What if you show everyone, including yourself, that you're still the incredible musician you always were? For a long moment, Isabella just looked at him. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, she signed, Will you be there? I'll be in the front row, Adrian signed back. I promise. The benefit concert was held in the hospital's main auditorium, a space that usually hosted medical conferences but had been transformed for the evening with lighting and a real stage. The seats were filled with doctors, nurses, patients, and supporters. Adrian sat in the front row, his heart pounding so hard he thought everyone around him could hear it. David Chun sat beside him, looking equally nervous. The program began with speeches from the hospital board, acknowledgments of donors, updates on the psychiatric wings programs. Adrian barely heard any of it. He was watching the side stage door, waiting. Finally, the MC announced, And now, we have a very special performance. Isabella Chin, a patient who has shown remarkable courage in her recovery, will be playing for us this evening. Please welcome her with your support. The applause was enthusiastic as Isabella wheeled herself onto the stage. She'd chosen to use her wheelchair tonight, even though she could walk. Adrian knew it was about conserving energy, about being practical. She'd also dressed beautifully, in a deep blue dress that made her look elegant and confident, but Adrian could see the terror in her eyes. She positioned herself center stage, her violin resting on her lap. For a long moment, she just sat there, staring at the instrument. The audience grew quiet, waiting. Isabella looked up, scanning the crowd until she found Adrian. He signed, I'm here. You've got this. She took a deep breath, lifted her violin, and began to play. The piece she'd chosen was Meditation from Thais by Massenet, a hauntingly beautiful melody that required emotional depth and technical precision. And as Isabella played, something magical happened. Yes, there were small technical imperfections. A note held slightly too long, a vibrato that wobbled a bit. But what came through wasn't imperfection. It was raw, honest, heartbreaking beauty. It was the sound of someone pouring their soul into music, playing not for perfection but for survival, for hope, for the pure love of creating something meaningful. Adrian watched her face as she played. Her eyes were closed, her expression one of intense concentration. But there was also peace there, the peace of someone doing what they were meant to do, what made them feel whole. When the final note faded, the auditorium was silent for a heartbeat. Then the audience erupted. People were on their feet, applauding, some openly crying. The standing ovation went on and on. Isabella opened her eyes, and Adrian saw the moment she realized what she'd done. Saw the pride and relief and joy wash over her face. She looked directly at him, and mouthed 3 words, "Thank you. I love you." Adrian felt his heart stop, then restart, then race forward into a future he'd never let himself imagine might be possible. The wedding was small, held in a garden overlooking the Columbia River Gorge. Isabella wore a simple white dress and flowers in her hair. Adrian wore his military dress blues, the medals on his chest catching the afternoon sunlight. The ceremony was conducted entirely in ASL, with a spoken interpreter for the hearing guests. When it came time for vows, Adrian and Isabella stood facing each other, hands intertwined. Adrian signed, "I promise to always show up, to never give up on you, even on the hardest days, to love you in silence and in sound, in darkness and in light." Isabella signed back, tears streaming down her face, "I promise to keep trying, to keep fighting, to keep making music with you, not just with instruments, but with our lives. You saved me, Adrian. Now let me spend the rest of my life showing you that you're worth saving too." As they signed the final "I do" and kissed, the crowd erupted in applause, hands raised and waving in the deaf community's version of clapping, a visual celebration of love and hope and new beginnings. Later, at the reception, Isabella performed again, this time with Adrian beside her, his guitar providing rhythm while she played melody. They weren't perfect together. Adrian was still learning, still improving. But they were in harmony. They were making something beautiful from their broken pieces. Dr. Okonkwo watched them from a nearby table, smiling. David Chun stood beside her, his eyes wet with happy tears. "You knew," David said, "from the beginning. You knew he was going to fall in love with her." Sarah smiled. "I knew he was going to save her. The falling in love part was a bonus. Best bonus imaginable." As the sun set over the gorge, casting golden light across the celebration, Adrian took Isabella's hand and signed, "Happy." Isabella looked around at their friends and family, at the life they'd built together, at the future stretching out before them full of possibility. She signed back, "More than I ever thought possible." And in that moment, in that perfect silence filled with love and understanding and connection that needed no sound, they both knew the truth. Sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones written not in words or music, but in the quiet language of 2 people who refuse to give up on each other. Sometimes saving someone else is how you save yourself. And sometimes the most beautiful music is the kind you feel in your heart, the kind that doesn't need ears to be heard. If the story moved you, if it reminded you that every person is worth fighting for, that love can bloom in the darkest places, and that showing up for someone might be the greatest gift you ever give, share it. Comment about a time someone showed up for you. Subscribe to hear more stories about courage, connection, and the extraordinary things that happen when ordinary people refuse to walk away. Because sometimes all it takes to change a life is one person who won't give up.